course, you know them as the Krassenstein brothers, right? I mean, they have a lot more than 100,000 subscribers. That's for sure. There's a reason for that. They do such a great job. And Ed Krassenstein, also the creator of the Krassencast, a great podcast, and they do such a great job. And Ed is joining us right now on the show. Ed, thank you so much for joining us to start the show today. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. It's always a pleasure to be on with you.
Yeah, you guys do such a great job, and I always love hearing your commentary. And I want to start with something that maybe doesn't have a lot to do with Donald Trump, or maybe it does, in regards to this mother in Minnesota. And you guys have been covering this story, who called a 5-year-old the N-word. And it seems as though, Ed, she's being rewarded almost $1 million in a GoFundMe page. What do you make of this story? And it seems like in Trump America, if you use the N-word and you show your racism publicly, somehow you get rewarded for that. What do you make of this?
Yeah, it's just crazy how we've seen it with immigrants, how the demonization of these people because they're not white has really taken hold. And it's like people are, yo, Trump's not racist, MAGA's not racist. But I mean, how else can you explain this woman raising all this money for basically being caught using the N-word? It just doesn't make any sense.
And why is it, Ed, that when so many MAGA Republicans, I'm just going to call them that because, in my opinion, if you've donated to this woman, you're probably a Donald Trump supporter. That's my assertion. Why
For
is it
sure.
that they want to talk about this kid who happens to be African American who stabbed one of his classmates? We don't know whether he's guilty or not. He'll have his day in court. But then so many people are making the excuse about that, because he deserves a defense. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And they try to correlate that to this. I don't understand that, Ed.
Yeah, and day in court, I don't know. Does that matter anymore? Like, do we give people days in court anymore, or is that just if you're part of MAGA, you get your day in court? Like, it's so funny to me because for 4 years we saw how MAGA and all the Trump supporters went after the federal government. Oh, the federal government, you can't trust them. Anybody they prosecute, you can't trust that they're actually prosecuting them for good reason. And suddenly, 5 months later, it was less than 5 months later, that suddenly the federal government does. You don't even need due process because the federal government's right 100% of the time. And
Yeah.
it's just that the hypocrisy is just endless.
And speaking of due process, I mean, it almost, well, not almost, it appears as though Donald Trump and members of his administration believe that certain human beings do not deserve due process, even if they're undocumented or not. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but in the Constitution, it doesn't say if you're undocumented or legal, whether you get due process. It's any person, whether you're undocumented or not. But yet these MAGA Republicans, they want to recite the Constitution over and over again. But if Donald Trump breaks it, that's totally okay.
Well, I mean, maybe they're just saying that undocumented immigrants are not people.
Yeah. Yeah. It
We
certainly
kinda
appears.
saw that in
Yeah.
during World War II, right? Isn't that what Hitler did? He dehumanized the Jews, and then it led to the Holocaust. I
Yeah.
mean, the dehumanization is definitely something that falls in line with what other authoritarians have done in the past.
Ed, in our lifetime, did you ever think that we would have a president that would defy the Supreme Court, the 9-0 ruling conservative Supreme Court, that would be living in a country where human beings, as you said, would not get due process and they would actually gloat about it? Did you ever think we'd be living in a country where they would
I
attack
I
judges?
didn't. I mean, I didn't until we saw the first Trump presidency. Then I think it kinda just opened the can of worms, and Trump came back again. But yeah, I mean, due process. I just don't understand how so many people can just throw it out the window and say it doesn't matter if these people get due process because we want to get them out of the country, and then it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says because the law is a bad law.
Yeah.
So change the law. If you really think it's bad, then get Congress to change the law. That's not going to happen because due process is extremely important. If Trump can say, okay, this person's an illegal immigrant and they're also a gang member, and because of that, I'm sentencing them to prison in a third party country.
Yeah.
What's to say that Trump, or let's say the next Democrat, what's to say the next Democrat president comes along and says MAGA is a terrorist organization? These people are not citizens of the United States. They're gang members, and I'm going to deport them to El Salvador. Nothing is to stop that from happening if we allow this precedent to continue. The Supreme Court's order has to matter.
And the argument from MAGA, besides talking about tattoos, which is absurd, is the fact that they'll call him a wife beater, among other things, yet he's never been convicted of a crime in this country. What do you make of that, where they'll go on just claims, throwing things at a wall, hope it sticks, when he's never been convicted of or even charged with any violent crime?
Well, because it doesn't matter to them. It's just whatever Trump says goes. If Trump said that you're a criminal, they'll be knocking on your door to, citizen arrest you. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. It's all about what Trump says. And Trump says somebody's a criminal, they're a criminal. Just like Trump said he was innocent, and he was innocent when, a jury of his peers found him guilty.
Right. And they'll call it a kangaroo court if it doesn't fit their narrative. You're just joining us, Ed Krassenstein from the Krassencast. So, Ed, I don't like bringing up Alex Jones very often. He probably has brought up my name on his show more than I've brought up his name. But what do you make of the fact that he's now saying Pam Bondi is covering up releasing the Epstein file case? I might actually agree with him a little bit here. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, Ed, and I know you're not. But maybe Donald Trump's name just might be in there. I'm just throwing that out there, Ed.
Yes. So the story originates with Project Veritas and James O'Keefe, who put out this video saying, it's being covered up, and they showed a picture of Pam Bondi. And Alex Jones claims that he has sources who he contacted, and those sources said, yeah, it's Pam Bondi who's partaking in this cover up. I don't know. I don't know why she made the claim over 2 months ago that she had the Epstein client list on her desk, and she was reviewing it, and now nothing was released, and now she says, okay, it's still coming. But I mean, how long did it take to black out a few names of potential victims? I don't know. I personally don't think there is an Epstein client list. I don't think he kept a list of his sex clients, right? I don't think that exists. But I do think there's court documents, and I do think there's probably testimony and maybe even video evidence of sorts that hasn't been released. And for some reason, the Trump administration is refusing to release it. Now, if it's Pam Bondi or not, I mean, to me, she'd be one of the less likely candidates to be trying to do this cover up, although she was, in Florida when the whole Acosta thing went down, and Epstein was in the East Coast of Florida when most of this stuff took place. But I mean, Trump obviously has connections to Epstein. Maybe it's something that he wants to cover up. Maybe it's something that he doesn't want some of his friends or his colleagues to be named in this. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We also know that Donald Trump was on the Epstein flight log at least 7 times. We learned that in the Maxwell trial. And we also have Jeffrey Epstein on audio saying that Donald Trump is one of his best friends. So that might have something to do with it as well. You posted this on your social media, and I wanted to talk to you about it because it's so, to me, so telling of some of the people that are in the Trump administration. Trump's Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, she sends a letter to Harvard, and you posted this letter because it has the grammar of maybe a second grader, and maybe that's insulting to a second grader. Bad punctuation and spelling, really just unbelievable ignorance, for lack of a better term. What do you make of this, that this is the Secretary of Education who has less than second grade grammar? What do you make of this?
I mean, can you really expect more? We saw the first Trump administration, we had Betsy DeVos, who was the Secretary of Education. He has this tendency to put people in these agencies who go against the ideal of those agencies, like the EPA. He puts people in the EPA that are basically anti-environmental protectionist, right? So I mean, in the Department of Education, he's put people in who are against the federal government having any say in education. Although at the same time he's trying to ban transgender athletes from playing sports in a public school setting. So I mean, it's all hypocritical. It's to destroy the public education. I mean, and she's probably going to do it. I mean, from the looks of it, she's well on her way to doing that.
Yeah, really sick stuff. I mean, in general terms, I was asked this on the Piers Morgan show, what's a man, what's a woman? And they constantly talk about transgenders in sports. And drag queen reading and banning books, but yet they don't talk about the real important issues that I think most Americans want to talk about, which is the economy. He said he would lower inflation on day one. Inflation's up 0.5% last I checked. Gas prices are not down throughout the country. He said he would end the war in Iraq the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. The Israel-Palestinian conflict is certainly no better now than it was on day one. These are the important issues that a lot of Americans do care about in putting food on the table. Why is it they don't want to talk about these issues?
Well, because they know it makes Trump look bad, and anything that makes Trump look bad, they're going to ignore because he's their cult leader. Uh, for so many of them, at least, they don't want him to look bad because it makes them look bad because they've been defending him for the last 8 years.
Yeah, it's really absolutely sickening to me. I guess my final question to you, Ed, would be, where do we see this administration at in 3 months from now? Where's the economy going to be in a year from now? Where is this headed? We are stuck with this man for the next 3.5 years. And we see what he's done with the economy already, just with tariffs alone, blaming DEI hires for plane crashes and FAA failings. Where do you see the country at 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now? Do you think everything is just going to get worse?
I mean, it seems that way. I think a lot depends on if the tariffs remain in effect. If these tariffs remain in effect, it's going to be horrendous for the economy. If he backtracks a little bit, it's still going to be really bad for the economy. If he removes the tariffs completely and says, "Okay, it's just a bluff," I don't see that happening. Or maybe he tries to pretend he gets wins with all these nations and then gets rid of them because he knows what's going to happen to the economy. If that happens, I still think the economy is going to feel the effects because already we're seeing businesses incredibly uncertain. We're seeing layoffs at the port. We're seeing businesses say, "I can't order more product.
Mm.
I can't. I'm not going to be able to sell more product in a month from now because I can't import those products. So I have no choice but to start laying people off. I have no choice but to scale back on things." So all these small businesses are doing this. Even corporations are doing. We're seeing it with Mattel. Mattel's worried about how they're going to make ends meet. We're seeing all of this go down, and even if he backtracks, everything's going to have slowed down. It's just like during COVID, where everything slowed down to such a level, it took forever for supply to ramp back up and catch up to demand. So I suspect we're going to see something similar to that. Of course, depending on much of these tariffs remain and how much he backtracks. But
Mm.
regardless, supply is going to be cut, and we'll see what happens to demand. But either way, if demand increases, that's going to cause inflation. If demand decreases, that's probably going to send us into a recession if we're not already heading in that direction.
But if things don't go Donald Trump's way, we've learned, Ed, he's only going to blame Joe Biden for any negatives, right? And if anything positive happens, that's definitely the Donald Trump economy, right, Ed?
Yeah, well, exactly. I suspect he's going to probably blame immigrants for a lot of it. He's going to blame Democrats for a lot of it. He's going to blame Democratic mayors for a lot of it, governors for a lot of it, and he won't ever take responsibility for anything. I think we've learned that by now.
He's done that his entire life. Ed, I love what you and your brother do. Please keep up the great work. Krassencast is one of the best podcasts around, and there's a reason why you guys have such a huge following. So always appreciate it when you do the show. Thanks for the time, my friend. Keep up the great work, and we'll catch up with you soon. Okay? Thank you.
My pleasure.
Appreciate that. That's Ed Krassenstein, everybody. The Krassenstein brothers are fantastic. They do a wonderful job. I'm sure they remember back in the day when they passed 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, but they really are great, and we always love it when Ed takes the time to join us, and we appreciate it.